What's up guys, Oikonter. This is my new channel where I'm gonna be reading Reddit stories. I find these stories really entertaining and I really hope you do too. First story I'm gonna read is called You Can't Use an EpiPen in Here. So, a little backstory. This story happened a few years ago. I have a severe nut allergy, so bad that my throat can swell and possibly close from even the smell of nuts. I was visiting my grandparents in Boulder, Colorado for a while, because my parents, who I was living with at the time, were on a cruise in the Caribbean. I had stayed around the house for a while that morning, and I was getting bored, so I decided to go downtown for lunch. I had been to a certain cafe which served paninis and other sandwiches for lunch in Boulder a couple of times, so I knew it was safe to eat there. It was a nice day out, so I ordered a sandwich and went to the outside dining area. My food came relatively quickly, just as Entitled Parent and Clueless Kid arrived at the cafe. Entitled Parent ordered a panini and a coffee while getting nothing for her son, which I thought was odd since he loudly complained that he was hungry multiple times since they walked in. They sat down at the table next to me and I noticed her son staring at my food. I waved at him and then went back to eating my sandwich. Entitled Parent got her food and her son just started to complain that he was hungry again. She sharply whispered something to him, reached into her purse and brought out a peanut butter jelly sandwich for her son. I did not notice at the time as I was on my phone and still eating my food. It was only when I finished eating my sandwich that I started feeling choked. I immediately looked around me because this cafe was almost completely devoid of nuts. When I saw Clueless Kid chewing on his sandwich. Me. Hi, would you please tell me where you got that sandwich? Clueless Kid just stares blankly at me. Entitled Parent. That's none of your business. Stop bothering my son. I was starting to feel weak. I always carry an EpiPen with me when I go out in public, so I took it out of my pocket when EP starts screaming. You cannot use that in here. I'll call the freaking cops, you pervert, trying to teach my son how to use drugs. The waiter rushes over. Waiter. Hello, ma'am. That is not a drug. That looks like an EpiPen. I could barely breathe at this point. I just needed to get an injection. The woman then proceeds to snatch my EpiPen from my hands and throw it into the streets. Another waitress ran out the door to retrieve my EpiPen, while the waiter starts yelling at her while the kid starts crying. Waiter. What the frick? He looks like he's going to die. He calls 911 while making sure she stays where she is. At this point, I'm curled up on the ground fighting for every breath. The waitress runs back inside and hands me the EpiPen. I could barely release the safety and stick it in my leg. The police arrive a few minutes before the paramedics do, first questioning Entitled Parent and the waiter, then arresting her after spotting a prescription drug bottle that didn't belong to her inside her purse. I don't know what happened to her kid, but I was taken to the hospital, feeling much better after the EpiPen, and released almost immediately after getting a new pen. Okay, what the actual heck, guys? So this mother, first she brings in food that's not from the restaurant to her kid, which is probably not even allowed. And then, when someone complains that there might be nuts in their food, she throws their EpiPen out in the streets. She's clearly crazy or something. Anyways, on to the next story. Entitled Parent thinks they deserve my plane seat. I was flying one of these cheap airlines where the seats are all crammed together, so I paid extra for a seat with more legroom, which also gave me free priority boarding. Usually, I don't care for that, but when you got a large bag like I did, getting on early so you don't have to keep it under the seat is worth waiting on the plane. The plane is now pretty much fully boarded, so enter Entitled Mom and her son, which is about 12 years old. I see them talking to a crew member for a while, but just go back to listening to my music. This is when I feel a tap on my shoulder, so I remove my headphones. Son. Hey, I'm flying with my mom and I was wondering if you could swap seats with her so we could sit together? I look over to where his mom is sitting and it's a standard seat. Me. No, I'm sorry. Kid looks a bit defeated but walks away. I put my headphones in and start to relax when I hear a loud voice. Entitled Mom. Excuse me? Me. Yes? Entitled Mom. Me and my son need your seat, as he is scared of flying, so we need to sit together. Me. I'm sorry to hear that, but I paid extra for a seat with extra legroom, so I won't be switching to a standard seat. Entitled Mom. You're sitting next to the only open seat. You have to swap with me. Me. Starting to get annoyed she won't take no for an answer. No, I don't. And if you needed to sit together, you should have paid extra to choose your seats, not bet that you can switch seats later. Entitled Mom, clearly starting to get agitated. I can't afford to pay extra for that. Just because you are rich doesn't mean everyone is. I'm a parent, so I have to save money. Now swap seats. Not sure how rich I have to be to afford the 5 to 15 extra euros it costs to select a seat, but alright. I'm really starting to get annoyed she won't leave me alone. Me. I'm not going to swap with you. Now please leave me alone. Entitled Mom, raising her voice even more. The stewardess said you have to swap, so we can sit together. Now do what she said and move. I've had enough, so I hit the flight crew button and the same woman they were talking to earlier comes over. Flight attendant. How can I help you? Me. This lady wants to swap seats with me, and she says you told. I get interrupted by Entitled Mom now yelling. He won't move. You told us he had to swap seats with us. Now make him move. Flight attendant giving me a supportive look and mouths, I'm sorry. She turns to Entitled Mom. I told you this is the only open seat, so if you want to sit together, you could ask him if he is okay with swapping. Not that you could force him to move. If he doesn't want to swap with you, you will have to go take your assigned seats. Entitled Mom, I have to sit next to my son. You have to get this brain damaged person to move or sit us somewhere else, or I'm going to sue you and delay this plane. Flight attendant, if you had to sit next to each other, you should have paid to select seats. Now I've had enough of your tone, and you will either stop bothering this man and go back to your seats, or I will have the captain deplane you. Entitled Mom looks like she's going to explode. She stands there for a moment before turning around and heading back to her seat, mumbling something. The captain calls out the cabin crew, prepare for takeoff, message, and I start to let go of the tension that built up. Flight attendant, smiling. Is this seat taken? I can't help but laugh when she sits down. Flight attendant, I'm so sorry about that. When I told them to ask you, I didn't think this is what would happen. I told her it was fine and we had a pretty nice chat during takeoff, until she went back to do her job. She also gave me a free drink once service started, so despite the annoying start, it turned into a pretty nice flight. I don't know guys, do people really act this way in real life? Like, she feels she deserves the seats of this guy, just because she needs to sit with her kid? I get that you want to sit next to your kid, but then maybe you should have paid extra. This just seems like awful. Okay, on to the last story. My son broke his computer. He's allowed to use yours. I was 12. My parents moved us to a new place. Our neighbors were unpleasant. They were the entitled mom and father. Never met him, so I can't call him entitled. With 2 sons, one was 13 and the other was about 8 or 9. The older brother, who will be referred to as OB, was a decent guy. We were school bus pals, but the younger one was an issue. But looking back, he was probably just acting like a normal 9-year-old kid. My mom did not like this kid. A few incidents happened before with him, and my mom nicknamed him the orange-haired goblin. I'll call him OG. This story is told from my mother's perspective, as she dealt with the entitled mom. Despite this happening over 10 years ago, I do remember that it happened, but the written dialogue here is pulled from my mother's retelling of the story, so there's a tad of embellishment. This was on the day of dial-up in my country. It was fantastic. My mom and I had a system where I'd quickly load a flash game with a heads up, then disconnect from the internet and plug the phone back in. It was the school holidays, so it was just my mom and I at home when dad was at work. so it was an otherwise empty house when this happened. Mom: OP, you're supposed to give me a heads up when you're unplugging the phone. I need to make a call. Me, from the backyard: I'm not on the computer though, I'm outside. Mom pokes her head out the kitchen window, sees me, looks confused, then turns around. She and I have the same idea, so we both head to the room with the computer and we find OG. Mom: Excuse me, what are you doing? OG: My mom told me I could use your computer. Mom: Why don't you use yours? Despite hating this kid, my mother is not unreasonable. She's not going to get annoyed with a 8 to 9 year old kid. OG: I broke it. Mom: Well, I'm sorry, but she can't decide that. You have to ask for permission. Besides, you can't let yourself in our house anyway. You can finish the game, but I need to plug the phone back in, so you can't load anything else. Mom then gives me a look that meant keep an eye on him. She later told me that she didn't want him to break our computer if he indeed broke his own, so she needed me to keep an eye on him. OG then leaves, then 10 minutes later we hear a knock on the door. I go to answer, but my mom gets there first. Entitled Mom: OG told me you won't let him use your computer. Mom: Sorry, who? Entitled Mom: My son. Mom: Oh right, the kid who let himself in. He told me you told him he could use my computer. Why is that? Entitled Mom: His was broken and I needed to entertain him. Mom: So that makes it okay? I wouldn't have minded letting him in if you just had discussed it with me first. Entitled Mom: He's an angel. There's no harm in him using it. Mom: Clearly there is, if he broke his one. At this point, Entitled Mom must have been getting annoyed. I heard this part for myself as she started shouting very loudly. Entitled Mom: He only broke his keyboard. He spilled his drink on it. It's safe for him to use yours because he learned his lesson. Mom: Still doesn't give him or you the right to come and go as you please and use our property without permission. Entitled Mom: But you said you would have let him, so what's the problem? Mom: My problem is a strange kid I barely know just walked into my house and used my computer because his mother said he could. If that's how you treat your neighbors, then you or your children aren't welcome here anymore. My mom slammed the door, and that was the last we heard from Entitled Mom, though she'd stare at us if she saw us leave the house. My mom would make jokes about the kid if she saw him in the streets, like, crap, it's the orange-haired goblin. His mother asked him to steal our keyboard if he ever comes around again. He understood his mother was a wackadoodle, so we just had a laugh about it. Oh my god, guys. What the heck? She tells her kid to just go inside their house and play on their computer? That's actually criminal, breaking into someone's house. And then later here, in the PPS, the Entitled Mom asked her older son to steal their keyboard so her son could use it. This lady is clearly crazy. Anyways, guys, that's it for today's video. I hope to make more in the future, and I'd really appreciate it, as I'm an upcoming YouTuber, that if you guys would share, like, or just comment on the video. Thank you so much, and see you next time.